Good evening. Today we are going to discuss about resettlement and rehabilitation of people, a case study. So, resettlement and rehabilitation of people. So, people are forced to move out of their land due to both natural and man-made disaster. Natural disasters like earthquakes, cyclones, tsunamis, etc., render thousands of people homeless and sometimes even force them to move and resettle in other areas. Similarly, developmental projects like construction of dams, canals, and flyovers displace people from their home. You must all be aware of the recent nuclear leakage in Japan, due to which millions of people were forced to leave the area for their safety. Thus, resettlement refers to the process of settling again in a new area, and rehabilitation means restoration to the former state. Now, we'll look into the reasons for displacement. So, here we have 10 reasons. First one is natural disaster like earthquake, cyclone, tsunami, volcanic eruption, prolonged drought condition, floods, hurricanes, etc. Then it can be man-made disaster like industrial accident in which happened in Bhopal gas tragedy, nuclear accidents like current disaster in Japan, and oil spill. Example is Exxon Valdez oil spill, toxic contamination of site, etc. In search of better employment opportunity, also displacement is possible. Then, for developmental projects, construction of dams, irrigation canals, reservoirs, infrastructural projects like flyovers, bridge, road, etc. Transportational activities like roads, highways, canal, etc. Energy related projects like power plants, oil exploration, mining activity, pipeline like HBJ pipeline, etc. Agricultural projects, and the last reason is project related with the conservation of wildlife like national park, sanctuaries and biosphere reserves. So next we are going to look into some of the examples of resettlement and rehabilitation. So we'll have displacement due to dam. India has been constructing dams and other hydel projects in the last 15 years. 20 million people have been affected by the construction of such project. Next example is displacement due to mining. Due to possibility of the accidents or sinking of the land, people have to displaced in and around the mining area. Mining take up several hectares of land. Thousands of people have to be evacuated. And we'll also look into displacement in Japan due to nuclear crisis. You must all be aware of the current nuclear crisis in Japan, where there was an explosion in three of the major reactors of Fukushima city due to tsunami. So now we are going to look into detail to the displacement due to dams. So here the example we took is of Hirakud Dam in Odisha. So the Hirakud Dam in Odisha was supposed to control flooding and bring people water and power. Instead, it has taken away their livelihoods and only brought them hardship and misery. The dam's primary objective was to control flooding in the Mahanadi Delta. Secondary objective included providing water for irrigation and drinking, generating hydropower, aiding fisheries and navigation. The Hirakud Dam displaced about 20,000 people living in about 250 villages. The Bakra Nangal Dam was constructed around 1950s and displaced a number of people. Some of them could not be rehabilitated even today. The government had assured the villagers of fertile land near the resettlement site for agriculture and to live in, but has still not allotted any of it. Land disputes, which have emerged due to land acquisition in the resettlement area, abound and haven't been resolved till date. The area is characterized by low income groups who even lack basic amenities. Very few children go to schools at this distance as the distance is too much. This has gone on for 60 years, has not gone unnoticed. However, not by the government. Sadly, neighboring district of Sambalpur and Jarsukda have noticed it, and people there are unwilling to marry into the families that have been displaced because livelihood options are slim to the none. So next is displacement due to mining. Here we took the example of Jaria coal field. So lives of around 500,000 people in Jaria in the eastern state of Jharkhand are at risk from land subsidence over abandoned coal mines where fires have been raging for over a century. More than a century of underground coal mining in Jaria in eastern India has left the land hollow, and houses and other overground structures collapsing due to subsidence has become increasingly common. The fire was quite far till a few years ago, but now it is inching closer and has almost touched our homes. Almost every household has people suffering from some sort of ailment because of the poor quality of the air, says the residents. Jaria coalfield posed a problem years ago to the local residents due to the underground fire. Some 3 lakh people were to be shifted and it became problem to find an alternative site. A huge amount of money to the tune of rupees 150 crores has been sent to put out the fire. Still, the problem persists. Next, we'll look into the displacement in Japan due to nuclear crisis. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident in March 2011, which followed the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami, displaced more than 150,000 persons as a large amount of radioactive materials were released from crippled reactors into the sea and atmosphere. After completing the cleaning task and radioactive decontamination, the Japanese authorities have progressively lifted restrictions on access in 4 of the 7 localities that were worst affected by the accident. Moreover, all the affected localities have suffered a significant decline in population as the nuclear stigma weighing on the region has resulted in many residents hesitant to return, especially if they have children. 4 years later, many of these evacuees remain displaced, unable, or hesitant to return home due to radiological and social consequences caused by the disaster. Currently, more than 2 lakh people have been displaced from their native place, and yet many are unable to find an alternative home. People were evacuated to protect them from the possible nuclear hazard and exposure. They are suffering from acute hunger as all the food supply was interrupted due to contamination of food particles by radiation. So that those were the three examples we took to make displacement, restoration, and rehabilitation clear. Now we are going to look into the objectives of rehabilitation. So the following objectives of rehabilitation should be kept in mind before the people are given an alternative site for living. Tribal people should be allowed to live along the lives of their own patterns, and others should avoid imposing anything on them. They should be provided means to develop their own traditional art and culture in every way. Villagers should be given the option of shifting out with others to enable them to live a community based life. Removal of poverty should be one of the objectives of rehabilitation. The people displaced should get an appropriate share in the fruits of the development. I should say that it is really a good move by ISC to share its profit among the active contributors. If resettlement is not possible in neighbor area, priority should be given to the development of the irrigation facilities and supply of basic inputs for agriculture, drinking water, well, grazing ground for the cattle, school for the children, primary health care unit, and other amenities. Village should be taken into confidence at every stage of implementation of the displacement, and they should be educated. Through public meeting, discussion about the legalities of the Land Acquisition Act and other rehabilitation provisions. The elderly people of the village should be involved in the decision making. Example of resettlement. The displaced people should be given an employment opportunity. Resettlement should be in the neighborhood of their own environment. So these are the objectives of rehabilitation. So now we looked into the objectives, the reason, and into few examples. But rehabilitation and restoration has their own problems and concern. which we will deal with in another PPT. So that's all. Thank you.